LiberalViewer presents.
So this torture report coming out Tuesday is going to be really harsh on the CIA. As you can see Bob Schieffer summarize on CBS's Face the Nation yesterday morning over in this clip.
This week, the Senate Intelligence Committee is expected to issue a long-expected report on the CIA's interrogation practices that were adopted in the aftermath of 9/11. This report is scheduled to be released Tuesday, but it is so controversial and is expected to be so explosive that Secretary of State John Kerry called Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein last week and expressed concern that its release now could endanger American facilities overseas as well as the lives of American diplomats and intelligence officers. We have learned that the report, which was approved only by Democrats on the committee, concludes that the CIA routinely went beyond what was legally allowable in using techniques including waterboarding. It says these techniques were not effective in getting information, and it alleges the agency systematically lied to itself, to the White House, the Department of Justice, and to Congress about the effectiveness of the program in order to keep it going. While the
So that kind of sounds like a public smackdown of the CIA, and that is exactly the phrase that CBS Justice correspondent Bob Orr used when describing what this report is supposed to show, also talking to Bob Schieffer on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday over in this clip.
Well, Senator Feinstein's in a tight spot, and she's not tipping her hand, Bob, but I think everyone we've talked to expects the report to come out probably on Tuesday. If it does come out, as you outlined, this will be a public smackdown of the CIA. This essentially will accuse the agency, in very strong language, I'm told, of going outside the law, doing too much without authority to try to get information from these al-Qaeda detainees. On top of that, the committee, the Democrats on the committee, are going to allege that this went for no purpose. No good intelligence was gleaned. Well, the CIA is going to defend itself. They're not going to necessarily defend the policy, but they are going to say, look, we tried to stay within the bounds of the law in the shadow of 9/11 when things were very, very tough. We made some mistakes, but in the end, real intelligence was had.
But we all...
So that's kind of the reporting on the public smackdown, but there was also an obvious reaction that's going on, and I guess there's a whole other side being prepared to defend the CIA. That was exemplified also in an interview on CBS's Face the Nation. They had on former director of the CIA, Michael Hayden. He wasn't there at the beginning of the Bush administration. I think he was, I think they'll say CIA director from 2006 to 2009. And he kind of weaseled through this a little bit by, at some points, talking about waterboarding and when that stopped, but then at other points talking about, well, he didn't use the phrase enhanced interrogation techniques, I don't think, but he talked about waterboarding to say how it happened to only 3 people and it stopped in like 2003, but then later he talks about how these things were ongoing when he got there and he reduced them, but thought they had been so effective that he couldn't completely get rid of them, but not waterboarding, other unspecified techniques, I guess. But first, here he is talking about the end of waterboarding before Obama got there over in this clip.
General Michael Hayden, he ran the CIA from 2006 to 2009. He's in Orange County, California this morning. General, was the CIA, we know that there was waterboarding in those months after 9/11. Was that still taking place when you were the director?
No, it wasn't, Bob. And in fact, while I was director and under President Bush's guidance, we took waterboarding off the table. The popular story is that President Obama had done that. Actually, it was long gone before he became president, and the last person waterboarded, of a total of 3, was in March of 2003.
Do you...
So by talking about waterboarding there, he gives the impression that it wasn't President Obama who ended torture, because he, had this executive order ending torture once he got there. But in this subsequent answer, you can see when Bob Schieffer asked him, well, did torture work? Or, is that, because that's one of the things that this Senate report says is torture doesn't work, which all the evidence reliable evidence I've seen shows that torture doesn't work because you get some information, but then also a lot of like made up stuff because people just like say anything they can think of. You know, if they don't know the answer, they make something up, and you can't really tell the reliable from the unreliable. But here you can see Michael Hayden saying that torture does work, and talking about how when he got to the CIA, they were still doing some kind of techniques that he reduced but couldn't get rid of because not in good conscience, because they just were so effective over in this clip.
Do you think the report did, I mean, do you think these practices did do any good? Did you get information?
Bob, I was a blank sheet when I went into CIA in late May of 2006. This was the elephant in the room. What were we going to do with this program? This had not been my program up to that point. I was free to stop it cold. And I spent the summer of 2006 looking at the facts, documents, and most importantly, Bob, people. I talked to analysts. I talked to interrogators. And at the end of the summer, I recommended to President Bush that we reduce the program, that we reduce the number of techniques, but that the program had been so valuable that we couldn't stop it altogether, even though now we had so much more intelligence on al-Qaeda from the detainees and other sources. Even then, the program had proven its worth, that I did not, in conscience, Bob, in conscience, I couldn't take it off the table.
What?
So yeah, you can see that's, I don't know, you can let me know if you think that is a contradiction, General Michael Hayden there, between saying that they stopped the waterboarding in 2003, but then when he got there in 2006, there are all these unspecified techniques that were so effective he couldn't end them all. And in addition to the supposed effectiveness of torture, which I think is bogus, another argument that also seems kind of not evidence-based, you'll see it's kind of faith-based. This is from Republican Mike Rogers back on CNN State of the Union talking to Candy Crowley, where he's making this additional argument that release of the Senate report is going to cause violence and death. I think he'll say that several times in this answer. And that's what people are saying. You can't release this report because it's going to cause people to attack our embassies or our facilities, or people who helped us torture, even though they're not going to be named. And as to why we should believe that's going to happen, it's because people, you know, all these important people are saying it or believe it, and that's really the only evidence you can see from Mike Rogers on CNN State of the Union on Sunday morning over in this clip.
No, I think this is a terrible idea. So our foreign partners are telling us this will cause violence and deaths. Our foreign leaders have approached the government and said, you do this, this will cause violence and deaths. Our own intelligence community has assessed that this will cause violence and deaths.
Because why? Because other countries, and they're not going to name other countries in interrogating and holding suspected terrorists. So if they don't name it and they don't have things that otherwise identify a country, why would it cause?
Well, certainly, again, these foreign leaders believe it will, our intelligence community believes it will, and our foreign liaison partners believe it will, because we have seen what happens when other incidents are used in the propaganda terrorist machine to incite violence. Think of the cartoons in Denmark and how many people died as a result. Think of the burning of the Korans and how many people died as a result. They will use this to incite violence. And here's the scary part about this. Well, again, and Secretary Kerry has engaged in this because he believes this is dangerous to what they're trying to accomplish overseas. That tells you something. This is more than just differences on what happened. This is, and then you have to ask this, Candy, what good will come of this report? There's been a Department of Justice investigation. It was stopped under the Bush administration. There has been congressional action to stop this activity. President Obama put an executive order saying he wouldn't continue any of that activity, not that it was going on, it had since been stopped. So you have to ask yourself, if you know that all of those learned people believe that people will die because of this report, what good can come of it, knowing all of that all those other things have actually happened?
Now, I don't know whether there will be violence that results from the release of this report, but I actually would believe, I've argued this in previous videos about like whether Abu Ghraib, the release of photos from Abu Ghraib, is responsible for violence, that it's not actually the release of the photos, it's what happened that is the cause, the real cause. If you don't want people to react violently to bad behavior by the U.S. government, it's not hiding it that's the solution, it's stopping it, and in the long run, having more accountability than we've had even from the Obama administration, that didn't want to look backward but look forward and didn't really bring anyone to accountability for what happened. This could be the closest we get to some accountability, at least shaming the CIA, if nothing else. And speaking of lack of shame, I guess, I want to show one more clip on this from former President George W. Bush, who was also had this long interview on CNN's State of the Union with Candy Crowley. Part 2 is going to be next week, and I'm going to spare you listening to a lot of it. But this is, I think, an even worse argument. In my notes, I have this written down is like, I knew these torturers, and they were good people. That's basically, he's vouching for them because they are good people and patriots over in this clip.
We're fortunate to have men and women who work hard at the CIA serving on our behalf. These are patriots. And whatever the report says, if it diminishes their contributions to our country, it is way off base. And I knew the directors, I knew the deputy directors, I knew a lot of the operators. These are good people, really good people, and we're lucky as a nation to have them.
Yeah, that kind of amused me. You can let me know if you think I knew these torturers and they're good people and patriots, if that argument persuades you. So let me know what you think. Are the people who authorized or engaged in torture really good people and patriots? And whether you think violence will result from these disclosures, will anything good come out of these thousands of pages documenting the brutal, ineffective U.S. torture program?
YouTube, you decide.